Charles Bassey. But yes, Count Bassey was a draft guy. I think spelled differently though. I think Bassie or Basie. Count Basie.
1, 2, 3 stocks. I assume we're live. I can't see Jordan. I can only see Spags, so I'm going to assume you pointed at me and stuff. Yep, there it is. What's going on, everybody? NBA Deeper Dive, Thursday, December 5th. I'm Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We're breaking down an 8-game slate on FanDuel and a 7-game slate on DraftKings. Interesting day, too. Lots of guys out, creating crazy amounts of value long before we get to lock. It's going to be fun to break that all down. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. How did the D'Angelo Russell experience go for you yesterday?
Not well, but honestly, better than the James Harden experience went, which Josh warned me about in the show. It's like, yeah, they're going to trap him. It's going to be tough. And I'm like, I can totally see a world where they trap James Harden, make it tough on him. Still played James Harden, and he had the worst game of all time. Like, they were down. They had scored 40 points at one point. We're down, I think, 40. And I don't know how it ended up because I was like, I'm done. I can't watch any more of this. But yeah, it wasn't a good time. But Russell busted as well. LeBron came through in that spot. LeBron made sure to put on a show in Miami, even though he got pulled early in the fourth.
Do you know what Harden's final stat line was?
Had to be like what? I know it was like 12.5. Actually, no, 11.75 fancy points because he lost one more for a turnover, I think.
Five points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers.
Well, he's well-rounded box score. A little bit in every category.
Yeah, that's something, man. That's something. Felt good about that one. I mean, I still played him because he was a really good DFS play, but I saw that one coming. That's for sure. Today's a wild one, man. The value that we have is crazy. There are spots that are really interesting in GPPs. There are some spots that are just devoid of any ownership. I'm kind of pumped to break this one down. It's a fun slate. It's a shame it's a football day.
Yeah. I mean, so honestly, a lot of people watching, I think, at least on the Splash Push stream I was doing, usually Thursdays and Mondays are down a little bit. So I think a lot of people still going to try NBA today because, they know it's a good enough slate.
Well, let's break it down, shall we?
I love that.
Denver Nuggets, 4.5-point dogs in Cleveland, 233 total. And boy, oh boy, are we not getting a ton of ownership into the Denver Nuggets, which doesn't surprise me. Tough matchup here against Cleveland. 20% ownership is coming into Jokic on DraftKings. No one else on Denver, DraftKings or FanDuel, is north of 7. So they are very sparse when it comes to anybody getting any ownership. But Jokic, to me, looks fantastic. He's in 35% of my stuff. There's certainly not a shortage in ways to get to him. We have infinite salary to be able to pay up for whatever you're looking for today. And I am more than happy to pay up for the guy that's like a 50-50 shot of a triple-double.
Yeah, exact same page with you. I got him in 53% of my sim lineups. He's just been a monster on the year. He's averaging 1.7 fantasy points per minute. I'm at 1.72 today. Maybe a little bit of risk that at a certain point Jamal Murray starts to shoot more. It's been my concern the entire year. This usage rate down to 22% this entire season so far. And you're getting Aaron Gordon back in as well. If you want to really plan a reason to be like, oh, maybe Jokic comes down, those would be the reasons why. The issue is like whoever's coming in, whoever's not in. Jokic is kind of the same guy in all these situations. He's a monster. You can afford him on the slate. Whenever I can afford him, I can. And I also have Luka a little bit lower today in terms of projection. So it just kind of makes it easy to cram in a lot of Jokic wherever you can.
Do you get to anybody else here? Is Aaron Gordon interesting to you now that the minutes seem to be up? Any of the regulars? Because I only got one single share of actually Christian Brown, which could just as easily be nothing and only Jokic. But I don't really have much of a priority here. I think Gordon would be the guy I would want.
Yeah, I'm getting Gordon about 9% here compared to the Fields, rounded up 7%. So it's not like a big stand, but he's producing fairly well in the year, 0.97 fantasy points per minute. So even with me having him a little bit lower than that at 0.93 per minute today, still think he looks like a really solid play at that price tag. Power forward only maybe makes him a little bit tougher, but still, I think worth it a little bit. I got a little bit of Christian Brown as well, 1% of him in my top 150 lineups, but I agree, not a lot to love here. I think Gordon's mostly a salary play that looks okay. Same thing for Brown, but less so. It's kind of Jokic or bust for me.
Alrighty. Cleveland side is equally as bleak. I mean, right now on DraftKings, Cleveland and Denver are owned the exact same amount, 33% to each of them in the aggregate. Now, Cleveland is a bit more owned on the FanDuel side. Pricing's a bit better. Really, there's only 2 teams getting any ownership, and then every other team on the slate is basically minimally owned outside of like one guy that could be getting it. The Spurs are pulling more than 25% of all of the ownership that exists on the slate. And then the Bulls, their opponent, are right around 100%, so about 12. So like 1/3 of all of the ownership is coming into Bulls Spurs. The other 2/3 has to get distributed to the rest of these games. So we're going to see limited ownership in most of these spots. Makes for some interesting GPP pivots, just not priorities. So we're seeing 15% ownership coming into Evan Mobley on DraftKings, sub 10% to the rest of the team. Still waiting on Ty Jerome news. Mobley, Mitchell, Garland, all in and around 15% on FanDuel. Jared Allen just shy of it. What do you like here for Cleveland? Because I kind of like Evan Mobley more than the ownership shows. And I feel like I should like one of Mitchell or Garland a little bit more as well.
Yeah, so I'm exactly the same page as you. I'm getting 21% Evan Mobley in my top 150. He's been producing really well in the year. Part of the reason Mitchell's been coming down a little bit in projections is because of the fact that Mobley's taken more usage on this year. He's still at a 23.1% usage on the year, 17% rebound rate, 1.2 fantasy points per minute. So all those numbers look good to me. The price tag being back under 8K for Mobley, I think feels pretty nice. Not a priority, but if I'm getting him in 1/5 of lineups, I think he probably makes a lot of lineups work as your sort of not mid-tier, but a little bit higher than mid-tier option, but not quite paying up as much for your Jokic's and those guys. Besides that, getting Garland in 12% of lineups, so higher than the field's 6.5%. Again, not a big stand there, but for tournament options, I do think those guys are solid. And I'm not getting Mitchell a lot, but I wouldn't mind getting him here because in this kind of
Yeah.
game, it feels like a Mitchell spot where you're trading between the stars. He absorbs a lot of possessions. You do have Garland coming off this nebulous head injury that's, I guess, not a concussion because he didn't go concussion protocol.
Yeah.
So Mitchell, I think, a more interesting play than I have him. I haven't had him highly projected this entire year. I have him always a little bit lower, so I'm not going to get him today.
I don't really have these guys in any way. I did get to 2 shares of Mitchell, which is enough to be, a little bit over the field. 1 lone share of Garland. I just kind of want a little bit more just for what this matchup is, the competitive nature of it. We've seen Mitchell and Murray go back and forth in playoff series in the past. That's always been fun. Maybe they try to revive that little rivalry, I guess we could call it. But yeah, there's just not much here. I want to watch the hell out of this game. Like, this is pretty clearly the best game on the slate by a mile. So from a just watchability standpoint, I love it. From a DFS standpoint, it's kind of not awesome, but nothing is compared to Chicago and San Antonio.
I'm always curious to pick your brain about stuff like this real fast, and we got a ton of games to hit on. But like,
Yeah,
what's
we're
wrong with
good.
Jamal Murray? Like, why is he just falling off the cliff here, at least early on? Like, he's climbing back a little bit, but like the rates are down so much.
I think it's twofold. And I think the easiest answer is the one that people will probably like the least. And it's just that he was never that good in the first place.
Ooh, that's a take.
Now, I don't totally agree with that. I do think he's good. It has been weird over the past like year or so, but I don't know, a little bit of injury, a little bit of just never having a healthy lower body, maybe a tad overrated. Uh, Not a lot of help, honestly. It's really him and Jokic and nobody else that can really do anything offensively. So probably carrying a load that's a little bit past his optimal way to be deployed. Like they kind of need a second dude that has any sort of like juice offensively. That's not Christian Brown. That's not Aaron Gordon. That's not Michael Porter Jr. I mean, Porter Jr. talented offensively, but in a very different way. They kind of just need like another guy that could take a little bit off of Murray, I think. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, Darko projections love him. He's never had a higher Darko plus minus than he does at this moment right now. So,
Really?
um, but I don't know. It's something's off. Something's off.
Yeah, not shooting well and not producing in fantasy usually set off the red flags for me, but maybe him not shooting as much is a better thing because he's somehow less inefficient through that process.
Maybe that Instagram gal took down
Suck the life out of
all
him.
of his talent.
She cut his pubic hairs like Samson.
Yeah, that's just all of his power was in his junk, and now she's in the WNBA. It's crazy. Can you imagine if that's how it worked?
That'd be pretty. I'd probably Give it a go.
Some of the some of these guys would have been out of the league before they even got started.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, please. They would have nothing left. Boxers with dead
The
legs.
WNBA would just be loaded with exceptional talent. The Dallas Mavericks are 14.5 point favorites in Washington. Don't watch this one on television. 15% ownership to Luka on the Dallas side on DraftKings. Nobody else is higher than 5. 13% ownership to Kyrie on FanDuel. No one else is higher than 5. I got to 2 shares of Luka. I don't think he looks like the best pay up option today. Obviously he could hang it on Washington in 3 quarters pretty easily. But I don't think that I'm going to have much here. The spot's clearly great, but Washington is next level dreadful. They're missing a bunch of dudes, a couple different guys in their rotation. Are you going to be getting to a lot of Dallas here?
No, so I'm low on Luca on every slate for some reason, which again is a great irony that I named my son after this guy and I'm like under projecting him all the time. But really, he hasn't been fantastic on the year. 1.44 fantasy points per minute. I'm at that same rate today. It just doesn't get me where you need to go, especially compared to Jokic. I do think that's where Luca has most utilities. If you're not playing Jokic, you get to Luca. That's sort of your upside play that you try to just have those two guys go head to head. That works, but should be a good spot against Washington, like, decent total on him. Some risk of this just being a game that gets away from everybody involved and Luka doesn't have the full upside, but I wish I liked him here a little bit more, but I don't have a single share in even 150, so I'm just low on Luka.
Okay. I don't hate it. We're basically on the same side here. Unfortunately for us, we do have to pay attention to the Washington Wizards. Malcolm Brogdon is in. However, a little dinged up. My trust level for him is quite low at this moment. But we're also missing Keyshawn George, Corey Kispert, and Kyle Kuzma. We're getting 25% ownership to Alex Sarr, 15 to Jared Butler, single digits to everybody else. Those are the same guys getting love on the FanDuel end as well. How do you feel about these Washington guys? Sarr feels good to me, and I don't mind that one. Butler terrifies the shit out of me, but the price works, flat 3K. And then we got a couple other guys that are going to be able to pick up some minutes and some slack here. What do you like for Washington?
Butler is the big stand for me. Butler is one, and he's like one of my guys. Like, he's one of the guys, whenever there's usage go around, I've put him in lineups. When he was on the Jazz, he filled it up in a bunch of DFS slates. Love Jared Butler. 3K minimum salary projected for 19.7 minutes by Stokastic today. That's just enough to get him where he needs to go. He's averaging 1.06 fantasy points per minute, and it does feel like he should be getting those run of minutes. Now, like, the rates, I think, probably drop off a little bit. Like, Bub Carrington's going to take some away in court time with Butler, I would think, based on what they've been doing together in the last few times out. I don't know if it's as good as it looks for Butler, but projection-wise, he looks good. I'll have him in about 40% of my lineups today because he's 3K minimum and he projects well. But he's a bench guy, can lose minutes. Be aware of the risk if you are going to play Butler as much as I am. Sarr, I'm with you on, getting about 25% of him. A little bit less than the field, who's a flat 25, albeit like 23 and change. But still a lot of Sarr for me. Kind of don't feel great about him when he's not getting full center minutes, which he's now playing alongside J-Val a little bit more, which is not, I think, his pure upside. But he works price-wise, power forward center. I think he's okay. And everything else here, not coming up at all. Just kind of Butler or Sarr or nothing.
How scared of how scared of Butler are you? Those are the words.
I really, and so I'm not scared of him because I know he's come through in spots before there's usage to go around. What I'm scared of is he's in one of those groups with like Bub Carrington, and Bub just starts taking every possession away, and Butler's just there kind of watching as the vet who defers to the younger guy. But look, I'll play him about, again, 40% of lineups is what I got him in the sim before the show, so he'll be in a lot of my stuff. 3K minimum, how much can he hurt me is, I think, the logic I'll go with today. But yeah, look, I think there's reason to be concerned about it for sure.
I'm nervous about it. Look, today is going to have a lot of interesting low-priced bench guys pulling some ownership on today's slate. That's the most terrifying way to get to anybody. But a fantasy point per minute guy at the flat 3K in a situation where there are lots of minutes to go around, and in a situation where decent chance he's playing in the fourth quarter because they got the shit kicked out of them. There is some upside for him. Now, this I talked about this on the strategy show this morning, but this is sort of a different spot where I'm expecting Jared Butler to play throughout the game, and then he has the additional benefit of picking up potentially some more run in a blowout. That's a tiebreaker for me, something that makes me feel a little bit better about it. But ultimately, and in these situations, they need to be projected for enough minutes to be interesting regardless. And I think Butler is. So scary, but I get the appeal.
Brogdon being out would have helped substantially. I think that would have been like Butler done, put him in everywhere you can. This, it's like, I think you still play him a lot, but know that there's a chance you kind of get left holding the bag.
Schedule for the rest of the day is very easy. One, you guys got to hit the like button. 1,000 of you in here, only 100 likes. That's not going to get it done. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. They'll kick it off at 6 o'clock. They'll take you all the way up until 7 p.m. But we don't stop there. It's Thursday. We've got NFL tonight. NFL Live Before Lock, 7:15 Eastern Time, all the way up until 8:15. So we've got 3 more hours. Well, starting now, we have 3 hours of additional coverage. We don't go anywhere, folks. We're the best in the business for a reason. Charlotte Hornets, 14.5-point dogs in New York, 218.5 total. No LaMelo, no Miles Bridges, no Trey Mann, obviously no Grant Williams, no ownership either. Not a single player from Charlotte got north of 10% on either DraftKings or FanDuel. I got to 10% to Brandon Miller, which is holding hands with the field. And that's kind of all I want here. Could take a shot on Nick Richards, but every team's got a viable center today, and we already have overwhelming value at center, so that becomes a little bit more difficult. What do you like?
I'm on Brandon Miller again. Had him a good amount last time out. It was honestly fun. I know, again, Josh hates these teams, doesn't like watching the games. I loved watching Hornets Sixers the other day because Brandon Miller apparently looked up to Paul George. At least somebody in my YouTube chat had told me, and I'm like, that's credible enough. But went at him like he did respect the guy and had a nice game as a result. Definitely did not look for the assist upside for himself, was not creating much opportunities there, didn't rebound very much either. So I think he actually probably has a little more ceiling, even if he loses some scoring compared to how he did last game, but got up a ton of shots there, ton of usage go around the spot. So Brandon Miller at 10% ownership, I think is a solid play. I'm at 20. Besides that, not much of anybody. Getting 5% though of KJ Simpson. KJ Simpson, if you wonder why your Vasily Micic lineups blew up the other day, it's because Simpson took all his minutes away. I think because of that, there might be some vague game theory logic, not projection logic, going to Micic again. These guys are basically splitting 48. Whoever's going to be the hot hand probably gets more run. But Simpson's been productive, averaging 0.92 fantasy points per minute. So in terms of value play, who I think has a shot at taking a lot of run, he's maybe a pivot point to a Jared Butler because he's like a young guy who could do more, but probably not really a credible play. It should probably mostly Miller, I think, would be the focus here.
These guys are just so atrocious with all these guys out. Josh Green, terrible per minute. Micic, nobody's excited about that one today, especially now with the price up. Salon, terrible per minute. Cody Martin, not great per minute. KJ Simpson, an absolutely terrifying guy that you could possibly get to today as like a value pivot. And then you're in the Nick Smith, Diabate territory, which I don't need. Only guy that's not a terrible per minute guy other than Brandon Miller is Nick Richards. And as we're going to get to, there's 1,000 centers you could roster today, including the best one on the planet as a bit of a priority in Nikola Jokic. Or the center in this game. 15% ownership coming into Karl Anthony Towns, around 10 for Brunson, 10 for Hart. FanDuel, single digits across the board. All of these guys are like $600 or $700 more expensive on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings. We may be getting Precious Achiuwa back. He's questionable. Campaign also questionable. So this could look a little bit different for the Knicks if those guys happen to be out here. What are you getting?
I'm getting a lot of Karl Anthony Towns. I've had him higher projected in the market this entire year, and it keeps paying off. And I feel like his price tag keeps staying a little bit lower than it should be at 9K flat now. That said, the matchup too, I think if you want to talk about that, like what is Charlotte going to throw at them at center that's going to stop what Towns is doing right now? So big fan of Towns here. I'm getting him in 25%. Actually, no, 35% of lineups compared to the field's 15. So I'll be heavy on Towns. I feel good about that. Everything else here with the field on Josh Hart, low on Brunson, with the field on Anunoby, no big stands. I think Towns is kind of the play. If you don't get to Jokic, go to Towns, feels pretty good. If you can somehow get to Jokic and Towns, you're doing something unique against the lower cheap center chalk. I think that could be a nice game theory play if you could find value elsewhere. But I like Towns a lot on every slate. No difference today.
Guy I got the most of is actually Josh Hart, which I'm sure nobody's surprised by. Got 20% of him, 15 of Anunoby, 15 of Brunson. I actually didn't get Towns, and I'm not super surprised by that. Like I'm over the field on Jokic. We've obviously got to talk about Collins and Bassie in the future. So there are, and to a degree, Iguodaro, but the power forward eligibility helps him out a bit there. So I'm not super shocked that I don't have Towns. I'd like to. I think he's properly owned at 15%. It's not a guy that I would want to have zero of. I just happen to have zero right now, but like I've been saying, there are a never-ending supply of center options today. I mean, we basically didn't talk about Jared Allen. And he hasn't had the greatest season or anything so far, and his minutes have been a little bit weird, but it's not like he's not a real dude. Dallas has two centers on their team that seem completely fine to get to. Hartenstein, Pirtle, Sabonis, Triple J if you want to do it. Misi is in. Vooch if you want to do it. Like every one of these teams has some 30-minute center that is completely reasonable to roster today. And I think that's what's stopping me from getting to Towns. That and the fact that I probably have 120% of my center and utility taken up by the two Spurs idiots.
Yeah, I get it. I think Towns, to me, if you're not going to get to Jokic, I think going to Towns, like I have Towns about where I have Luka projected. So like, and Garrett, I'm low on Luka, fully admit that, but I think that's where Towns appeals more to me. And yeah, look, I think it's worth being with the field on it, but I get how you could not get him as well on a slate where like there's so obvious center value. But on those kind of slates, that's when I'm like trying to come over the top on Towns. I think a Towns Jokic lineup tonight would be very fun. And I don't know, well, Josh, what would be the odds of that being a tournament winner? I know you look at these kind of things. Two PF center
Of
options winning a tournament.
uh
Make
let's
up a
see.
number. Make up a number, but say it confidently as you do.
9%.
I'd go 12.
Okay. I would have went 9.5 actually, if that helps.
Oh, well, we're close. We're close.
Close. OKC Toronto. So Thunder, 9.5 point favorites in Toronto. God, they're so damn good. So damn good. 27% ownership coming into Shea. I also have 30% of him, so that's probably stopping me a little bit from Towns as well. He's the only guy in double digits though. 20, we'll call it 25 for Shea, 15 on FanDuel, sub 10% for everybody else. And really the only other guy even getting any sort of love is Jalen Williams. He's about 10% on both sites. I got 25% of him too. I love those two guys today. Very happy to get to Shea and very happy to get to Jalen Williams. We got Caruso back now, so bench is a little bit more crowded than it's been. I don't want much else here, but those guys look good.
Yeah, I'm lower on Shea. I think this is where we're differing is I'm getting more Towns, less Shea. But I like the way that it's lined up for you where I'm getting 10% Shea, 10% Jalen Williams, and 15% Hartenstein. All three guys I like a lot. Hartenstein, too, fits that game theory thing that I talk about a good amount. Just busted really as major chalk last time out, going back to him the next time out. The price tag being up a little bit doesn't make you feel that great, but still a player that's producing about 1.24 fantasy points a minute on the year. Very involved too, assist rate wise, 20% assist rate, which I noticed because I had so much Hartenstein last time out. And I'm like, wow, he's getting a lot of he's starting pass plays a lot here, swinging to the corner, little DHO stuff for him to get some easy assists. So Hartenstein can get there, even though it didn't feel like it the last time that he was on a slate as chalk. But I like getting a share of all these guys. Not a big stand here. 10 for SGA, 10 for Jalen Williams, 15% Hartenstein makes me feel happy. And I got a little bit of Isaiah Joe, a little bit of Wiggins, but those are just kind of filler plays.
I got one share of Dort. I had a lot more of him earlier today. I'm happy that that went away. I wouldn't mind if I got Hartenstein, add him to the list. Like that's just all these guys are just going to be like unowned, and one or two of them is probably going to have a pretty damn good game that you'd be fine with having. Sort of in those situations, you're just trying to dodge the like two of Jokic, Bassi, and Collins just having real days where you can't make it up. Jokic from like he has a 40, 15, and 15 type joint, and then you're doomed. And then Warner Collins of Bassi just has a day that provides crazy value. You'll get a little bit boxed out, but I don't mind Hartenstein and GPPs, but it's Shea and Jalen for me. Man, these games are so weird to talk about. And then we're going to get to Chicago and San Antonio. It's just going to be, we take the shackles off.
Everybody.
Toronto. 25% ownership to Barnes on DraftKings, 15 on FanDuel. That's kind of the theme too. Like the guys that are getting ownership on all of these other teams are just the best players because you're locking in your value in like 3 or 4 different spots. And then you just have all of this salary and you don't have to worry about like your Case and Wallace's or your like O'Shea Akbajis and stuff. They're just like not even on the radar. You lock in your value and then you just funnel in all of the best players that exist on every other team. And that's what's happening here again for Toronto. Same situation as OKC. The only guys getting any love, Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. Jakob Poeltl's not getting anything. Lump him into the same bucket as Isaiah Hartenstein. But I like Scotty Barnes once again. I don't feel like I ever get him right though.
Yeah, Scotty Barnes was the crazy, crazy chalk the other day, and Stokastic had him fairly high. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know how they got him that high. He ended up beating that median projection by like another 10 points. So like he's just a monster right now with getting this point guard role. I'm sure people see it on social media. His now all of Scotty Barnes' bios say point guard. So now he's really a point guard as opposed to last year and change where he's been just functionally the point guard and playing point guard in general. But Scotty Barnes looking good overall. I'm okay with him getting 25% of lineups. So a little bit lower than the field technically by 1%, but that doesn't really matter. A quarter of my lineups will have him. Getting a little bit more Barrett than the field, getting 16%. Lineups with Barnes and Barrett looked really good last time out. In this spot, too, if they somehow hang in against the Thunder, that could be one halfway to it. I worry a little bit about Barrett in this spot. I feel like Barrett's not good enough to overcome OKC's defense. Barnes, maybe, with all he does. But that's more of a, the basketball watcher in me. Projection-wise, I think Barrett looks good. Nobody else here to me, though, besides those two.
Yeah, it's weird, but I get it. Like it all makes perfect sense to me. I'm not surprised by it at all. I kind of like it. You could really just rotate around like fun guys to watch, and then you could just watch as Zach Collins and Charles Bassey both bagel, and everything's dead.
What a ride you had with RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes in between.
Oh, oh. All right, guys. Here's the deal. Over the past, I don't even know, week plus, you guys have heard a lot about Black Friday promos and Cyber Monday promos. I hope that you guys took advantage of it, but if you didn't, you're shit out of luck, sort of. You can still get into Stokastic now for no cost whatsoever using the link in the description. Now, this isn't a promotion. You're going to have to sign up through one of our affiliates, either on the Pick'em side or the Sportsbook side. And you're going to get something from them too, but this will cost you goose egg, $0 to us. Click the link in the description or the one that Jordan just dropped into chat. You'll come up to a page on Stokastic. It's going to show you a huge list of pick'em sites and sports books. If they're legal in your state and you haven't signed up there yet, go ahead, click the button, handle their deposit, whatever they needed to unlock their bonus. That could be bonus bets or deposit bonuses, something like that. Follow the instructions on the top of the page. You get a month of all of our Stokastic tools for whichever sport you choose for no cost at all. Sims, ownership, projections, boom bust, post-contest sims so you could evaluate how you're doing. This is really the easiest way to get in, and you get the benefit of signing up at one of the partners and some sort of additional bonus from them. So you get everything from us for free for a month, some sort of bonus from that site, and you have the ability to continue to make money with whatever they did for you. It doesn't even have to be a loss. That's pretty easy to me. So go ahead, check that out, click the link. You'll appreciate it. If Jakob is out, Boucher probably looks good. So my question, like he's got the illness. It's new-ish. It's a little nerve-wracking. Just before we get off of Toronto, do you have any thought process onto what happens if Jakob Poeltl is out? I'm assuming Grady Dick plays since he was questionable last time out and didn't get in. So I'm kind of just banking on the fact that he's going to be in. But how are you handling Jakob Poeltl?
Honestly, I'm not making a contingency for it because I think there's enough okay value besides these guys, and I'll still have some swappability with Bassey / whatever I'm getting on the Spurs. So I haven't been planning for it. I assume Boucher would look a lot better. Jonathan Mobo would look playable, borderline playable, I guess. But yeah, that's sort of it for me. I think Mobo would become a pivot point potentially to the Collins Bassey stuff, / Boucher at power forward at a little bit more money. But yeah, I'm not gonna like a lot room for it because I assume Poeltl goes. I feel like Pirtle's the kind of guy I'm not really worried about missing for an illness, but that could just be stupid. I don't really have a reason why to feel that way.
God, we're gonna end up playing like he's gonna end up getting ruled out, and the best value play of the day is gonna end up being Chris Boucher, and something we didn't talk about until like 5 o'clock today.
Yeah, but it's like, what do you do? Like, you just allot room. I'll have some room in lineups, I think, because of how much late ownership I have. So I'm not gonna like, what would you do? Just like set aside with a placeholder $3,700 guy or $3,400 guy?
I honestly, it's really hard to deal with. I mean, there's not much you're just gonna have to hope you can swap into it. You're gonna have enough flexibility because of Chicago and San Antonio that you'll be able to move everything you want around for this one. I would imagine. And plus, Iguodaro in the Phoenix game at 8 o'clock is probably going to be pulling some ownership. That's another guy that can get offloaded a little bit, moved around. So I think it'll be fine. Sacramento and Memphis. sort of a fun game. God, I like Memphis. I love Memphis and hate Memphis equally on both sides. So I guess I'm neutral to them. I love them as a team and like the fact that they're good and like not fun to play against. I hate them for all of the bullshit that they pull on a constant basis when they're injured. They are 3-point favorites at home, 242 total against Sacramento. Highest pace of the day, highest total of the day. But not a ton of ownership coming in to either side, unsurprisingly. 15% to DeRozan, 10 to Monk, sub 10 for everybody else. Fox, Sabonis, DeRozan, all 15 on FanDuel. Are you prioritizing anybody here? I still really like Malik Monk compared to his ownership.
Yeah, I'm lower on Monk. I'm getting 5% compared to the field's 10 and change. I mean, he's starting now. He's getting a lot of work. It's just such a crowded group up top where you have that DeRozan usage, have the Fox usage. Sabonis is lower this year, but like can take over in any game you would think. But like Monk getting a ton of minutes projected for 30, 34 and change today by Stokastic. That's a pretty good amount. So I get the logic, but yeah, 5% for me compared to the field, 11 for him. DeRozan, I'm getting 12% of. I think the price tag works well. Small forward, power forward works well. Not a player I'm in love with, especially now with Monk coming in. I think he's kind of going to probably hurt DeRozan the most out of the guys who just kind of absorb less usage and be okay with it. Fox, I'm willing to get more than the field of, getting almost 2x the field on him. He's just been great on the year. You're getting some faint rumors of him maybe forcing his way to Sacramento. Now he's part of his clutch is already putting some stuff out there that might indicate that he can move. Not that that matters, but like he's been great on the year and he's going to probably keep being great to get whatever this next outcome is for himself. So I could do the Fox thing. Probably not going to do the Sabonis very much though. I've only got 3% of him. But these guys all feel like tournament plays, I think. And just Monk feels a little point chasey, but I get it.
If he's going to just continue to play all of the minutes, I mean, this rotation for Sacramento is getting pretty wild. DNP CD for Keon Ellis last time out is I don't understand. It makes no. I was talking earlier on our projections call. Like he must just be like a piece of shit that doesn't work hard at practice. That's the only way that this makes sense. Like they need a guy that can play some defense out there. That's what he does. You hope that he can be good enough on offense to offset that. Well, so far this season, he's shooting like 45% from three. So it's not a on-court NBA product thing. Like he is the 3-and-D guy that can guard the best guy in the backcourt for all of these teams. And he got a DNP CD. So I have to assume that he either like loafs it at practice, everybody hates him. Because if he's busting his ass, I have no idea why he's not just playing 24 minutes a night for these guys. I can't figure it out.
I mean, just bad coaching too. I mean, maybe they think they need more offense to solve something instead of just putting a defender out there. Because like the answer putting Malik Monk in the starting group, like that's like a more firepower thing that you probably don't need. Where it's like they're killing Keegan Murray right now too. Like Keegan Murray, I feel like is regressing a lot as a player because of the fact he doesn't have real opportunity for himself. So I would tend to err on the side. I think they're just not a well coached team, well run team on that front. But you may feel differently.
I mean, I liked Mike Brown up until now. I think he did a good job with the tools that were at his disposal, but I'm very surprised. If that keeps up for Keon Ellis, he's going to end up on a team that could actually make the playoffs. And that's going to be very good for Keon Ellis. Or he's just a total jerk. Memphis. 10% ownership to Ja on DraftKings. 12 on FanDuel. Nobody else is higher than 7 on either site. Now, I would very happily take GPP shots on Desmond Bane and Triple J. I think those guys look good in comparison to where their ownership is, especially in a high total matchup like this one against the Sacramento team that's not all that illustrious on the defensive end. And those are the only 3 guys that you can have any sort of confidence in playing the most real minutes for the Grizzlies. That said, I only have 1 share of each one of them. Are you getting to any of Morant, Bane, or Triple J?
Getting Morant in 8% of my top 150 right now, so I feel okay about that. I was not getting a lot before. It seems like he got maybe a minute extra in projection, so 30.5 minutes for him. He's averaging 1.4 fantasy points a minute on the year. I think he's a solid enough play, but certainly not enough to be like a priority. But I think a good tournament option at 10% field ownership. If I'm getting 8, I feel okay about that. Everything else much lower on 1% Jaren Jackson, 1% Bane, 1% Santi Aldama, 4% Marcus Smart because of the salary and point guard, shooting guard eligibility. 3% Brandon Clark, just not real stands here. But getting the Morant amount, I think, is a good thing. Like, I feel like he's been weirdly missing in every projection system this entire year. And then he has these random tournament games. So at least we're now at a spot where he's projecting well enough to get 10%. And I think that's an appropriate amount for Ja and a team that's got too deep of a rotational like normally.
Yeah, he's been so weird. Like it always feels like you can't get to him because he's going to play like 29 minutes.
Mm.
And then he goes out there and plays at like a 2 fantasy point per minute rate in those 29 minutes and you still need him. And it's just like, well, how? How? So good when he's able to play and not brandish firearms. Anything else from Memphis?
No, it's honestly not. It seems like a good game environment overall. Like, one of the higher totals on the slate, a decent pace overall, but really nothing screams priority here. So wouldn't be shocking if a tournament winner comes from this game. Maybe two players from this game.
Phoenix Suns, New Orleans Pelicans. Oof, 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 oof. So Phoenix has a Q tag on Ryan Dunn, which does carry a little bit of weight, depending on how much you like Royce O'Neal. And the other big piece here, no Kevin Durant, no Yusuf Nurkic. 25% ownership is coming into Royce O'Neal. I have 30. Around 10 for Devin Booker. I have 15. I kind of like this Phoenix team in a weird way. And then Oso Ighodaro got the start last time out, 4,400, 18% owned. I have 30 there as well. He's 34% owned on FanDuel, which is crazy to see. You're also getting Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and Devin Booker pretty heavily owned on FanDuel in the 15 to 20 range. Let's start with Ighodaro. Assuming he starts, how are you feeling about him in comparison to some of the other value plays we have?
I am low on Iguodaro every time, and I don't know why. Like, I don't know what I'm doing that's putting him off, but he's averaging 0.73 fantasy points per minute, so I think that's where it starts. He does contribute a little bit in every category, but I presume the way that my projections work is I'm just giving more numbers to other guys, filling in with no Durant, where like Royce O'Neal projects really well for me. I'm getting him in a lot of lineups tonight, about 40% of things, which feels lofty, but that's sort of why I think I'm not getting Iguodaro. I just I don't know. Like, I know you've kind of spoken positively of Iguodaro and what he's doing. I watched him visually. I'm not that impressed. He seems to always start hot, then fall off the cliff. I think he put up 17 fantasy points as semi-chalk last time out. I'm just not there with how he's been producing. I get the logic for why he should be a better play, but data-wise, I just don't get there in any slate, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on much.
It's the power forward eligibility that is changing it up for me. Like he hasn't been a great per minute guy. I have him at 0.8. He's been in like the 0.7, low 0.7 something range, if I remember correctly. But the fact that you can put him in at power forward is really just the differentiator because we have this value that all looks the same at center. You've got Jared Butler as that value option at point guard, but we don't really have that version of a power forward today. And I think that's what's causing him to slot in. And the fact that, he's assuming things go the way that you want them to go just from a minute, like ignoring the weirdness of how games can go. He's playing real minutes, 28 and 31 over the last two with Nurkic out. I don't even have him projected for the 28, and he still looks solid to me as a value just because of that position. That's my assumption here. At some point in time, it's just going to click, and he's going to have a 28-minute game and score 1.1 fantasy points per minute because he gets a block or two and the rebounds work out his way and the putbacks work out his way. That's the day you're kind of looking for. That hasn't happened yet, but it's in there. It's in there for everybody.
I think that's a logical way to look at it. I think just projection wise, I don't see it in an eye test wise. I'm like, with all these guys on Phoenix who the moment like Durant's out, it's like just a bunch of Lord of the Flies kind of situation. People swarming to get their own shots up to get their own opportunities. I feel like he gets lost in the sauce a lot. And I don't think he adds enough value. I mean, he's an okay rebounder, but like block wise, you mentioned he's not getting there yet, but maybe will possibly regress a little bit. I'm just not impressed by him, but like I get why people get there. He projects as a 5x value for me, but just not high enough to get him a ton. Like everybody else will probably get him tonight.
How do you feel about Booker and Royce O'Neal, the other two guys that are getting any love here?
Your Royce, I love getting 40% of him. I think he looks like a strong play. He probably is the projection that's not going to Iguodaro, I think, is moving to Royce O'Neal the way that my stuff is set up. So averaging 0.93 fantasy points a minute on the year. Royce has been kind of a man who contributes in every category in general since moving to the Suns. So I think he's a strong play here. Yeah, that's it. Booker, not a lot, 4% of him. I think there's upside there. Beal, unplayable. I'll say that. Booker's at least playable. But yeah, not priorities to me besides Royce. I think Royce having the small forward, power forward. I think he works for a lot of different lineups.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of O'Neal here just because the minutes are certainly there. If Ryan Dunn is out, they're really, really there. And he plays enough regardless to be an okay option, even in the worst sort of situation. 4,900, small forward, power forward. He's my preferred option from Phoenix. I did get to 15% of Booker, though. Happy to get him here with Durant out. And I kind of just want to get Booker because 4 out of the last 5 games that he's played against New Orleans, he's scored 50 real points. So I'm hoping that DraftKings will allow me to use some of those points from the past in my lineup today.
Yeah, I mean that's not how that works. I know Josh loves DVP so much. I have to tell him that's unfortunately not how it goes. But that is crazy though. That does feel like there's like 4 in a row. Feels like there's gotta be something to that. Like, does he hate New Orleans? Did they do something to him?
Yeah, I don't think Devin Booker thinks about New Orleans other than having a good night out.
Does Brandon Ingram share a baby mama with him? Is that a thing?
He definitely shares a baby mama with somebody, right?
Well, Ingram does. Ingram would like I forget who was. There was somebody on the opposing team that Ingram was
Anthony
Simons.
Simons.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like he busted Simon's ass at a game to see him. It's like, yeah, you got him. Like, oh, you won the baby mama duel. That's sick.
These guys probably cross-pollinate quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a
They're
select
like
group of
they're like
gals.
second birthday parties. Must be wild, man. It probably looks like an all-star game. These dudes are everywhere. It looks like an all-star game or the VIP section of that city's strip club. Because if they're all congregating in one spot, they probably go to that strip club too.
Honestly, they might be overlap between the two for certain players.
Yeah. The strip club comes to them for that party because chances are that gal worked there too. Pelicans. They're getting healthier. Brandon Ingram available. Yves Missi available. And the big one, Herb Jones available. Welcome back, brother. No Zion, no Tice, no Reeves, no Hawkins, no Alvarado. So it's not all that great. There's no ownership really coming in here. 15% to Murray, 5 or less to everybody else on DraftKings, 25 to Murray on FanDuel, 4 or less to everybody else. I got a real hard time wanting to click on anybody for this team right now based on everybody that's coming back. The only guy I got to with any sort of gusto was Murray, and all I did was match the field. I just think these guys are way overpriced for everybody being back in this lineup.
I'm getting 2x on Murray. I mean, Murray is playing well fantasy wise, and he is probably more due for positive regression than any other player in the NBA right now. 37% true shooting on the year, 21% from 3. He's not doing anything well, but the free throw shooting is still there. So like he's going to have it level out at some point. So Murray, with his usage and the opportunity he's had, still assisting on a good rate, averaging almost 1.1 fantasy points per minute. I think today could be the day he gets there. So I'm going to be with Murray about 2x fields. I mentioned about, 30%, a little bit less than that. Getting 9% Trey Murphy, whose rates I have not knocked down. I probably could, and that's why he's coming up more for me. But obviously when you have Ingerman, you have McCollum in, you have Murray, and Murphy's not going to be the same player, but he's still okay price-wise. And has a small forward, power forward eligibility. Everything else here got a little bit of Yves Missi, but nothing to note. 1 share of McCollum. Just it's really to me a lot of Murray and a little bit of Murphy.
Yeah, I got Murray and then 1 share of Murphy, McCollum, and Missi. So pretty much the only guys that I would want to get to today. This team's tricky, man. This team's real tricky. I just want them to be healthy. They're awesome when everybody's around. Like they're a 50-win team if everybody's healthy, and now they're probably not gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Zion thing is going to get out of control fast. It feels like with some of the news being leaked from somebody's camp.
I don't know how that all shakes out, where he ends up, because he doesn't seem long for the Pelicans.
Mm-mm. He doesn't seem long for health either. Like I don't know how he got in shape briefly and now he's like back out of shape. It seems.
Yeah, it's going to be real tough to play basketball when they have to cut off his foot.
He's a gout. He's living like a European king in the 1500s.
Oh, you're going gout. I was going diabetes.
Oh yeah, but they go hand in hand.
Yeah, either way, it's getting lopped off. Oh man, anything else for the Pelicans?
No, I think it's really just the stand on I have on Murray kind of surprises me, but like looking at the numbers, like he just is legit. He's got to shoot better than he's shooting. He's missing everything, and he's a good player.
One last promo for K Powers to fast forward through in the future. As long as Jordan is back, let me check that. I don't know if he is or not. Jordan's here? Cool. I'll do this read then. Didn't realize if you were here or not. That could have got ugly. Well, actually, it wouldn't have made a difference, but it would have been a weirder read. Cyber Week is the promo. 70% off the portfolio EV tool on OddsShopper. This is the best thing we have. DFS or sports betting, this is what you want. And I think we've proven it time and time again. But for you guys to get in at 70% off to get the best sports betting app that exists anywhere in the industry. And we have all the data to prove it. We have a giant results database with hundreds of thousands of recommended bets, along with the ROI aggregated to all of the different categories. Pretty much any way you sift through that data, you're looking at a 5% ROI or higher, and you could lock in even higher than that depending on how you want to set up your filters. Greg is doing a bankroll challenge every single day on Twitter using OddsShopper to show you what it would be like to build up from a $100 bankroll using OddsShopper. In the first 35 days or however much has passed of the NBA season, he's got it up over $500 already. You don't need a lot to start. It's very easy to use. I've started one recently called Only Dogs. So if you only want to bet underdogs that are recommended from OddsShopper, follow my Twitter for it. We've got tons of other OddsShopper content coming out from Aton, from Laffy, from Nathan. I'm sure I'm missing people. I apologize. Eric, obviously. Greg, obviously. We got a lot of OddsShopper content that exists, just showing you guys how easy it is to use. You guys could take advantage for 70% off. We're here. You ready?
Yeah. Game that doesn't matter on the DK slate.
Chicago Bulls.
Oh, no, never mind. I thought we had the last one.
No, the game that matters.
Yes.
Chicago Bulls, 2-point dogs in San Antonio, 236 total. This could get even crazier for Chicago. No Lonzo, no Adama Sanogo, no DJ Stewart. They don't matter. No Kobe White, no Patrick Williams. Q-tag Josh Giddey, which could make this even crazier. 20% ownership to Zach LaVine, 15 to Dosunmu. That's both sites. 10 to Vooch, 20 to Giddey. On DraftKings, we're also getting 15 to Buzelis and 20 to Talen Horton-Tucker. I'm just going to open the floor to you. Where do you want to start with Chicago right now?
Chicago, Talen Horton-Tucker is coming up a lot as that value play for me. I think that's the play I'm curious your thoughts about the most. I have to say visually, I was talking about it on my Splash Play NBA stream before this. Talen Horton-Tucker's always been a beefy boy, always been a big boy. He's looking extra fat these days. Like he is looking like, and I don't, not to shame. I've been there before. I don't mean to do it again, but like, I really think that he just, you don't look at the same guy visually, still putting up 1.15 fantasy points per minute, still feels like he should get a good amount of minutes here, 19.3 is minutes projection. I feel the worst about Horton-Tucker of all the value on the slate, but I'm getting him in about 1/3 of my lineup. So where are you landing on Horton-Tucker?
Same, 30%. I hate it.
Yeah.
3,100, small forward. Small forward is the hardest position to fill. It's the one that we definitely didn't mention any super low dollar guys having that sort of price tag throughout all of this show. So it's happening. I only have him in for 16 minutes. It's disgusting. He could play more. Kind of wish Jakob Poeltl ruled out.
Oh, so he's not tough enough to get past an illness. I was wrong.
Grady Dick will play. There was something else that popped up before that I definitely forgot to say. Oh, Ty Jerome will play as well. And Precious Achiuwa on track to make his debut. So yeah, the Giddey news will change things because if he ends up out, then Talen Horton-Tucker is going to be, depending on when that news comes out, like he would be one of the most popular plays on the slate at that point. At least I think he would be. Because if you get him up to like 18, 19, 20 minutes at a minimum, that's going to become 50% ownership. Buzelis would probably look a lot better. He's also at the flat minimum. Julian Phillips is at the flat minimum. He started last time out. Jalen Smith is 3,400. Like we didn't even really talk about him because of all the value for San Antonio. Dalen Terry could become a thing. Flat minimum, small forward, depending on if Giddey is in or out. So the guy I got the most is Talen Horton-Tucker. We're on the same page there. Second most, thank God, is Zach LaVine in 25% of my lineups. Because if it would have been Buzelis or Phillips or Terry, I would have been really sad with the experience that I was getting from Chicago.
Yeah, my second most is Dosunmu. I'm getting him 15%, which I think has been where I get him on every single slate, which I think works though, because if Giddey's out, Dosunmu is probably the one who takes the biggest jump up in terms of opportunity to be able to run point guard a little bit more because Giddey takes so many possessions away with what he does. So Dosunmu I'm at. Everybody else I'm under 10% on. I did not get a lot of LaVine. I got the least Vooch, which the field is as well, but thought I have Vooch better projected than LaVine. I just can't get there with all the center options as Josh has talked about throughout this video. So to me, it's mostly THT and Dosunmu, and everything else on the Chicago side, I'm under on by more than I would like to be honest.
So I'm, like I mentioned, 25 on LaVine, 1 share of Dosunmu. which I would like to have a little bit more. I think he grades out pretty well. One share of Vooch, add it to the center list. I have 10% of Giddy. I don't mind being a little light there. If I need to swap to more of it, obviously not a problem. I got to 15% of Julian Phillips, which sucks because he sucks, but he's 3K, and that's the theme of today. And then I have 15% of Buzelis as well, who doesn't suck as much as Phillips, but at least is probably slated to play a little bit less than him. Tell me this is real. I believe, I believe that Mo Salah has re-signed with Liverpool.
Oh, where are we going with this? I know it means a lot for Josh. Yay, Josh. I'm happy for you.
Oh,
Freaking news alert.
dude, that's big news, man. That's big news.
He's one of the best players in the world. I know that.
Oh my God. Give him everything. Open up the checkbooks. Rat bastards in Boston. Let Mookie go. Don't do it here. You ready for San Antonio?
Yes.
So there's no Victor Wembanyama, and that is causing absolute destruction to San Antonio today. No Trey Jones as well. The assumption would be that Zach Collins is starting for San Antonio. He is 3,500 on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel, a $2,300 price difference. Kudos to DraftKings for this one. He's 60% owned on DraftKings and 7 on FanDuel. So if you're playing across sites, please be aware these are very different things. 59% owned Zach Collins, 3,500 starting center, most likely. I don't know how you dodge it. Like, to me, like, I don't see the path to thinking it's a good fade. I'm fascinated by Collins. He's in 60% of my stuff. I'm more than happy to have him.
Yeah, I'm getting less Collins than Bassey because I do have Bassey projected better straight up. With Stokastic's minutes, Collins is at 24.9, Bassey's at 22.3. For today, I would have Bassey at 1.1 fantasy points per minute and Collins at 0.96. So that's enough to give me Bassey anyway with him being cheaper. That said, like practically, I'm going to have less lineups tonight because I'm doing NFL too. So I'm going to put in, I know I'll have lineups where it's like Bassey, lineups where it's Collins, lineups where it's neither, and just see how that works out. That's going to be my plan. They're the make or break on the slate. They both have logical merits. Bassey can take minutes away from Collins. He has before. Collins is a starter, though. If he plays hot, Bassey gets less minutes. Bassey, too, feels like he's waiting for foul trouble to come at some point, though he's only averaging, honestly, not as bad of a foul guy. Collins might be more of the foul risk here, I guess. Projected for 3.8 for me today. Bassey's at 2.6 in his minutes. Bassey feels like he should be a foul-prone guy. But foul stuff could wreck either guy, too, so got to play one of them, I think, but I'll play some with neither, I think, just to try.
Let's get the other easy piece of this one out, at least easy to me. Devin Vassell is 5K, $1,000 cheaper than he is on FanDuel, shooting guard only. And last time out, we saw Devin Vassell play 28 minutes, which is the most we've seen him play in a bit. So we know that he can do it. Feels like a spot where you would want him to play 28 minutes again when your actual best player isn't playing. To me, he's the actual easiest guy to click on today at 5K. He's in 55% of my lineups. He's 44% owned, but he's actually good and will play as much as his body can handle him playing. He has no competition for playing time.
Yeah, he's been a beast on the year so far. Not a lot of sample size of court time without Wemby in particular, but 50 minutes this year, 104 possessions, 31% usage, 26% assist rate, 1.35 fantasy points per minute. It's not that far off of where he's been over the longer term sample size as well. So Vassell to me a smash play. I think after Josh Talk's projection team, they actually knocked a few minutes off of Vassell, and he still looks really good, even with him getting about 2.5 less than he had projected this morning. They have him now under the 28-minute mark that Josh just mentioned. That has been his high for the year. If he gets to 30, he's even more of a smash. Might get to 40 fantasy points in projection. Right now, he's one of the best plays in the slate. I have an 80% of lineups, and I think of all the value we've talked about, like he's the one play here that I feel like I would find it hard to imagine him failing. Anybody can fail, but I think the pathway is a lot cleaner minutes wise than what he's been doing wise.
How do you feel about the 40% ownership coming into Chris Paul? Now, this is the same 40 on both sites, so he's a different conversation than what we just had. I'm matching the field, but I hate it. I don't think this is a good spot for Chris Paul with no Wemby.
I'm also close to the field. I have 39%. The issue is like the pace, the matchup. Like if he wants to run a little bit, he'll find some easy assists. You would think he still has enough shooters around him. Having Sohan back out there is not a good shooter, but still can convert off an assist. I think would be solid too. So I don't mind Chris Paul. I am a little bit lower than the field, but still getting him, 40% of lineups is more than enough, even though it is slightly less than the field. So I agree with you. Like, I don't love him. I still think he's a good projection play today. Should gain a little bit in usage and assist rate with Wemby off the court, averaging 46% assist rate and 19% usage in that court time without Wemby this year. So I think he looks good. And, frankly, you could talk me into taking more. Just projection wise, I didn't get there for more than the field.
I prefer Castle to Paul today. Shooting guard, 4,900, 20% owned. Not a great offensive player, but, going to have a couple extra shots to go around with no Wemby here. He's actually, I feel a little bit better about Castle than I do about Paul. Paul just makes me nervous. Any Castle thoughts?
Yeah, I got 11% of him, so I'm under the field. I mean, he's just not doing as much, 20% assist rate compared to Chris Paul having 41% on the year. Court time without Wemby, 23% assist rate for Castle compared to 46% for Chris Paul. So I get the logic, and Castle could be out there more. Their defense he provides could be a thing that they need to kind of buzz around out there. But like Chris Paul running an offense and producing a lot fantasy wise, I think that's the thing I expect to happen the most, just how easy it is against Chicago.
Let's hit the final one we got to talk about. We're leaving it to this one. Charles Bassey, backup center for the Spurs. Center only. 3K on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. This is preposterous. So you're not playing him at all on FanDuel. This conversation is irrelevant. He's 50% owned on DraftKings. At this moment, I have 30. He terrifies me the most because he's live to play 28 if Collins looks like shit. I think he's live to play 14 if they happen to bring Mamu into the equation or potentially just go small. But no matter how much you knock his minutes down, he still looks like an incredible point per minute guy because he's like a 1.2 plus fantasy point per minute dude. So you can discount him, still have him be a great play. I'm just not so sure I love the idea of him being in half of the lineups.
Yeah, I think that's the issue I have too. I'm not going to stop it from happening, but I am getting him in about 60% of my lineups today. So I'm getting 3x the amount of Collins as I am. With Bassey, I'm getting 3x the amount. I feel good about him stylistically too. Like he's a rim runner, shot blocker against Chicago. Like that just should be pretty easy for him to be able to do that stuff. I think double even in 20 minutes would not be the craziest thing in the world for him. The rate he's rebounding at, 19% rebound rate, it's the highest on the team. I like Bassey here. I think he's worth the ownership. It's just the risk that, like, if Collins does well, Bassey's minutes get squeezed. If Collins gets in foul trouble, doesn't do well, Bassey's going to win the slate. So, or, be a part of the winning lineup, even though he won't single-handedly win it for you with that ownership.
Yeah, he's going to be all outcomes are on the table for him, and that's just scary to me. But they have options to not have to play him every second that Zach Collins doesn't play. And that's the part that when you're rostering a bench guy, that scares the hell out of me. We're getting a ton of questions about Jeremy Sohan. I think he's the least playable person from the Spurs today.
Yeah, I didn't get much of him. He's put up usage. I got 3%. Field will be at 2. You want to take a tournament shot on him, you can. He'll be unowned, but like Vassal's the better play on paper. But Sohan is leverage against Vassal, so I get the concept.
I'd rather have Castle, Paul, Champagny, Barnes, Vassell, Collins, Johnson, and Bassey. So yeah, that's my take on Jeremy Sohan right now. So I'm sure he'll just smash. We can close this one out very quickly. The FanDuel version of Houston and Golden State. Houston is going to be without Tari Eason for today. And we are, I believe, still waiting on official news for Fred VanVleet, who is questionable. We're getting a lot of ownership on the FanDuel side. VanVleet's at 10. Jabari Smith is at 20. Jalen Green's at 10. Şengün is 40 on FanDuel because remember, they don't have that same sort of value thing going on today. And then Amin Thompson is 25. I like these guys a lot. I think Dylan Brooks probably should get a little bit more ownership. I really like Jabari Smith with no Tari Eason around. I think he's just going to play like 34 plus minutes. Houston looks amazing, and so does Golden State. This game on FanDuel is the best. This game on FanDuel is what Chicago San Antonio is to DraftKings.
Yeah, that said, I'm kind of glad we don't get it on the DraftKings slate because it would just be almost too much to put together with all the chalk congregating. But yeah, Şengün looks great to me on FanDuel. I'd have him highly projected. 40% ownership's a lot, but if he gets a Jokic, great, but it's going to be harder to do that on FanDuel. So Şengün is your Jokic proxy for a little bit cheaper, I think works. With you on Jabari Smith being better than usual here. He's still been terrible on the year at 0.81 fantasy points per minute, but having Eason not in there, Eason does so much of everything. I think that should open up his opportunity a little bit more. Not as crazy about Dylan Brooks. Amin Thompson on FanDuel. The price tag's a little bit tough, but projection-wise, you can get there, especially if Van Vliet's out. Then Amin Thompson, I think, becomes a much sexier play. But yeah, Houston gets whoever, and Golden State, I mean, everybody's playable, especially if Wiggins is out.
Yeah, Wiggins questionable. No Steph, no Draymond. 25% ownership coming into Pajemski. That might even be light. Just under 20 coming into Wiggins. That's light if he's in. 34 to Kuminga, 25 to Buddy Hield, which I actually think might be light. 17 to Trace Jackson Davis, 17 to Kyle Anderson. The Anderson one scares me a little bit. Slow-mo is okay, I guess we could say. But Pajemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, Hield, yeah, I like all of that. And I wouldn't mind having a share or two of Kevon Looney if it breaks correctly. I don't mind having Trace Jackson Davis. And this might get even crazier if Wiggins ends up out.
Yeah, I think top down, I would have Wiggins highest projected, Pajemski not that far off, Hield then a little bit of a chasm there in a second tier. Looney a little bit behind, but you're probably not playing Looney or Trace Jackson Davis on FanDuel, I would think. Kyle Anderson, I agree, decent value. Honestly, would be the best value for the DK late slate for me. But yeah, like honestly, all the Warriors are playable. I would prioritize Wiggins and Pajemski, but Hield can get there. I think even honestly, Lindy Waters could potentially hit.
Yeah.
Anything's playable from Golden State. Just follow your heart, I guess. But Wiggins, Pajemski, I think it's here of their own.
Yeah, I think you're live to be able to play anybody from Golden State outside of Gary Payton. And even that could get you there, but it's an 8-game slate, so that seems tough. But everybody else is in play. Yeah, Houston Golden State is the FanDuel version of Chicago and San Antonio. But we have reached the end of the line. So guys, for the 2,000 of you that are here, hit that like button, run that like number up, live before lock. Coming up next, Spags, tell the people where to find you.
You can follow me at Chris Spags to check out my Splash Play NBA channel where I do a video before this one every day, Monday to Friday at 4 p.m., running through my projections, comparing to the Stokastic data, looking at prop markets, that whole deal. Check it out. And shout out to all you guys. Hope it was a good video. Hope you guys have a lot of success today on this madness on the Thursday slate.
There we go, folks. Another one in the books. Close it out tomorrow. Greg and I will be watching on playback. Should have a fantastic Friday. You've got NBA Live Before Lock next and NFL Live Before Lock after that. Have fun.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It's Thursday, December 5th. I am Eric Lindquist at Eric Lindquist, and I'm joined by nobody here at the moment. I am Eric Lindquist, and I will be covering here the first couple of minutes. It might be some of your biggest nightmares, but for the most part, I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to roll. Hopefully, we can get Greg joining us here shortly in relief duty. That would be awesome. But hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bells. We begin our boarding walk here. If you're playing DraftKings, obviously we've got 7 games. We've got 8 over on the old FanDuel slate. Looking forward to breaking everything down here in and out. But Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass there, he can help me out. I want to discuss one thing to begin our day. It is this Spurs situation here because it is backloading our lineups to the nth degree. You've got Zach Collins and Charles Bassey rightfully pulling a ton of ownership, and I'm a big fan of just being able to jam both of them into lineups, but you have to make one kind of a caveat because we have tons of Bulls news that's going to be showing up. And so having a lot of salary that you can have access to is very, very important on today's slate. And it's one of those, what I like to call rolling slates, where as news comes in, as we get the Toronto starting lineup and see kind of what those minutes look like, as we get the Chicago Bulls lineup and see what those minutes could potentially look like, we're just going to be adjusting our lineups throughout. So if you have the Sims tool, if you are here at Stokastic and you're ready to rock with the projections and the updated projections as things come out, you're in such a good place to be able to succeed tonight. But Eric needs a Suggs intervention. Hey, Suggs played decently enough yesterday. I could have preferred that game 2 days beforehand, but it is what it is. I'm looking at the board here, though. Look at the Sims tool today. Zach Collins, I just don't see how you get away from him. He's a good fantasy point per minute guy. He gives you access to, I think, probably the most no-brainer play and gives you another lineup spot there. Devin Vassell, Chris Paul. We've seen Devin Vassell's points prop. I'm just constantly updating, refreshing Odd Shopper. Gone from about 15.5 to 17.5 and now juiced towards the over pretty heavily on that 17.5 number. I think those minutes also have a little bit of room, a little bit of wiggle room to work up into the mid-30s if need be. So many great things here in the Chicago and San Antonio game that make it easy to play this pretty straight up here and just react to news as it rolls out. All right, other plays that we need to be paying very close attention to on today's slate. We got Josh Giddey. If Josh Giddey ends up playing, we have him currently projected for 20% ownership. There's a part of me that thinks we see something very, very different there. A Q tag over on DraftKings still carries a little bit of weight, and this is a matchup where you could see those minutes extended because there's no Lonzo Ball. There's obviously no Kobe White already, which opens things up for Ayo Dosunmu and Josh Giddey to share the floor here. But if you get Josh Giddey ruled out, there are really no rules to this slate. But considering the top 4 plays currently in ownership are all San Antonio Spurs, I think we kind of need to just build with that in mind, have 7, 8 lineup spots that are starting from the get-go. What is this, Jordan Klein? You're pulling up the old, what is happening? Oh, you're letting Greg in. Greg Ehrenberg officially on the screen. I'm pulling him up here. You should follow him at G Ehrenberg DFS. And yeah, that link join that was just fired up there. He's doing the bankroll challenge. If you guys want to take advantage of that over on Odd Shopper, I very strongly recommend it with Portfolio EV. But then also on the Stokastic side, you can get the Sims tool for free. So whether you're looking at sports betting content or whether you were looking at DFS content, we got you covered here on both sides of the street. Greg Ehrenberg, how you doing, my dude?
Good. I am joining playback right now as well. So yeah, a little bit of a shuffle, but showbiz, things happen, right? So trying to get this sorted. Apologies, you had to start on your own. So hopefully everything is okay with Matt Belman because we hadn't heard from him. So I was going to do the NFL show tonight, talk to Ben Raza, messaged him. So Ben's going to take my place on the NFL show and I get to NBA with you, which is, this is my natural habitat anyway. So here we go. I'm running lineups right now because I was out eating dinner and Jordan texted me. I was like, all right, screw this dinner. I got to come home and hang out with Eric.
Oh, that's okay. Honestly, it's normally in the bedroom. Today, it will be on the virtual Zoom room. So I'm glad that you came and joined me last second. Again, normally the bedroom. But I'm very excited about this slate. Did you end up reserving some NBA lineups now after the fact? Are you planning on playing?
Yeah. So I haven't built out my lineups yet, but I had everything reserved. It's a little bit different, right? Because when I'm actually building lineups and I know I'm going to be on the show, I have everything built in advance. But if I'm not on the shows, I don't build lineups hours in advance because what's the point? They just have to be updated anyway. So yeah, working through it right now. What is it that you've covered so far?
I was just talking about how this is kind of what I call a rolling slate where we're focused in on San Antonio and Chicago. A lot of our ownership is going to be concentrated around it, but I want to get into the ins and outs about having Collins and Bassey reserved in the same type lineups, because that's something that I'm trying to filter out a little bit here. Yes, it's a lineup spot given up, but it doesn't give you enough salary to get up to some of the Chicago Bulls that you'd want to get to if Josh Giddey's ruled out. And if Josh Giddey is in, we've got him currently projected for right around 20% ownership. I think there's a world where I'd want to be over that for the first time on Josh Giddey, probably all season long. I think that there's also, a different iteration of this starting lineup. Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell. I mean, we have so many Spurs, and I'm just kind of forcing some extra Bulls because Taylor Horton-Tucker really the only Chicago Bull pulling any ownership besides Josh Giddey, sitting there at 20%. And I want to get to lots of Zach LaVine. I want to get to lots of Vooch. And then once that Toronto news shows up here, we'll be able to pivot some of those pieces onto that 7:30 p.m. spot. So yeah, we have Boucher projected pretty well. But I wanted to ask you, as you're looking at your lineups coming through for your first Sims run, Chicago, San Antonio, what's standing out to you from that one?
Yeah, so I mean, still we're going to have to get that update on Josh Giddey. I don't know how much you've talked about his injury situation, but he is questionable. And, as is, Giddey's minutes are kind of all over the place, where some days you'll see Josh Giddey play north of 30 minutes. He played 32 last game, but if you look at the 2 games previous, he played 24 and 23 minutes. So you never know. There isn't usually a middle ground either. If you look at his minutes, it's usually around 30 or it's around 23 to 24. You don't see a lot of games where he's playing 27, 28 minutes, but there is potentially a big minutes gap to fill there. So the way I'm looking at Chicago right now is I think there's potential for a good amount of value here. And I mean, also we've got the Toronto game starting at 7:30 Eastern time, which you had referenced. I don't know who you're assuming is going to start at center for them in the absence of Jakob Poeltl, but I kind of just want to have some reserved spots in my lineups for those games to start. And the 7:00 games aren't going to be quite as important to me.
I'm with you. 7:00 games, Dallas, Washington. I think I want to get some Luka. That's probably the one guy that it's really hard for me looking at this slate to not want to be over on. I don't know how many times we've had this happen early on this season. Normally, this is like the tail end of the year where we start breaking down, oh yeah, we want to jam in all the studs and, here are the crappers around him. But there's so much 3K value. And if you get Jonathan Mogbo or Chris Boucher potentially starting either one of them, I think that just adds somebody else that you could potentially fire up. I'm under the assumption Mogbo gets the start. I don't know how I feel about him relative to Bassey and Collins, but it would be later news. He wouldn't be probably as owned as what those two are, where people have been building up lineups all day. There's a lot of public money and stuff like the $1, $4, 20 max, where I think it's kind of set it and forget it for some people. You see less sharp ownership there, but I think Mogbo would be kind of an interesting guy to be getting to. It would be an absolute smash to get a good fantasy performer at power forward, like a 3,600 Chris Boucher. But there's no doubt that this Chicago news, it's just like the most pivotal part of the slate. And I want to get some of the higher upside options, Luka Doncic, SGA on the other side of that Toronto game, from those non-8 p.m. Eastern time games, and then just kind of build around it from there. I guess, do you have a choice between Jokic and Luka Doncic on who you would rather get to if we just have all of these salary savings in the world?
Yeah, it's going to be Luka for me. And I know that
Same.
You did reference that with the point of if we have all of the salary savings in the world, because, that does kind of indicate that we don't have to worry at all about salary. And if it actually was salary agnostic, the answer would be Jokic. But there's an $800 salary difference between Luka and Jokic. Plus, you have the point guard eligibility for Luka as opposed to Jokic, who's a center. And then center is going to be a really important position for us today because of whatever happens with the Raptors news. So with that being in mind, I would rather it be Luka if I'm prioritizing one of the pay up options from the first game.
Yeah, and he's not center. That's the big thing for me, is that Bassey, Collins, Mogbo, all of them being centers makes it really hard. I'm a little surprised people are getting to as much Jokic, but we'll see what else shows up. Maybe you do get a Boucher. We're at power forward. That would help me get to more Jokic, as opposed to having, another center in Mogbo that I would have some interest in. But I'm going to let the projections do a lot of the work here. I'm going to catch us up on some super chats as we're going. Yes, this is opposite day here on Thursday. Greg Ehrenberg He's in the analyst chair. I'm very excited about this. But SC gifted us 5 subs. We appreciate you. And Elder, I saw he won 30K again yesterday. Just a ridiculous run. He's on $100 super chat. Much love again. Came in second in the main yesterday after taking first 2 days ago. Hell of a week. Projections in the YouTube vids are always helpful. Guys, I mean, that's just beautiful. This community is awesome. And seeing people just kind of rise up in the course of like 3 days, 2 days, and you're winning $130,000. You love to see it. That's why we do what we do, Greg.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I call that not a bad week at the office. So shout out to Elder. It is kind of funny because there really is no correlation between if you did well in DFS on Tuesday, you should do well on Wednesday. We have seen a bunch of that come up as of late where somebody will message us and be like, hey, I had my biggest win ever on a Monday. And then they're messaging us again 2 days later with another really big win. So yeah, shout out to Elder. It's been a big run for him. And then who was it? CJ Cashing, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, had something similar happen where he won like 100K and 25K. And then another one for like 10K or something like that over the course of a week. So yeah. Shout out to Elder there and all the other guys who've been messaging us with big wins.
Absolutely love to see it. I won 0K yesterday, so that was fun. Donnie Boone, $2. Yo, Eric, who is the nuke of the night? Let's cook. I promise you we will get to that here in about 19 minutes. We'll do it right around 20 minutes beforehand. I'll make sure that we get to that one specifically. Chris Williams, as always, super generous. 5 subs coming in from him. And then SC $10. The one day Greg leaves the house, he gets called back in. LMAO. We appreciate you guys. No better duo and show in the industry. Let's get it. I really appreciate that. Obviously, this I'm sitting in Greg's chair and Greg's sitting in my chair. So I guess he has to be the mopey one today. So Greg, are you missing out? What were you having for dinner that you're missing out on so the people can know?
I was at Surf Turf in Earthentown, which it's just kind of like burgers, chicken, that kind of stuff. I get vegan mac and cheese there, which it's just mac and cheese, but it's made with cashew cheese, so it doesn't have dairy in it. So that's it. Just got up, left, came here, and now we're back. Good thing
really
is I decided to drive and not walk because or else I never would have made it back in time.
I honestly, a walking bets version of NBA Live Before Lock is something we should test. And I think you're the perfect candidate for that.
Why not? I think I've got the attributes for it.
Yeah, no. Price Productions, $20. Who is your most rostered player that doesn't play for the Spurs? I think this is a fantastic question. We'll pull back up the projections, Jordan Klein. We just got a nice fresh run of them all of 9 minutes ago or so. I feel good about what I'm looking at right now. 18 minutes ago now as I refresh it one more time. We'll obviously refresh it whenever we get that Toronto news for the people. But right now, looking at your lineups, who is the first non-Spur that comes up for you?
I've got a sim running right now, so I don't know for sure. I'll know in like 15 seconds, but my assumption is probably going to be one of the bigs from Toronto, but we'll see. We'll see when this comes through. I'm also really unsure who ends up starting because I do agree. Like we've seen Magba start this year, and I know that Hisu, you said you think will end up being in the starting unit, but he's also really small. We've seen him start at power forward, not at center. He's only 6'6". So it's do the Raptors want to be that small with him at center? Then you look at the rest of the roster. They could go. This wouldn't surprise me. I think they might just go Bruno Fernando as kind of like a placeholder starter where he might start and play like 20-ish minutes or something like that. And that would really kill the value from the Raptors front court. But yeah, it's kind of hard because I think Magba's the most likely guy to start, but also looking at his size, I don't know if they want to start him at center.
Would getting a flat 3K Bruno Fernando ruin it? I don't know if it would ruin it. It would just be a headache because you'd be talking about a 3K flat guy who's not the best fantasy performer in the entire universe. We saw him in Atlanta for a long time. There were a lot of those, like it was Houston that we saw Bruno Fernando starting over Alperen Şengün for a long duration of that season. That was absurd, Greg.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's one of the reasons I want to have flexibility. Actually, right now, because I just finished running lineups, I got to a lot of Sar, which is probably more of him than I want to be getting to, but he is currently my most rostered player who is not a San Antonio Spur. I'm going to dial that back a little bit. Here's a more reasonable answer. Scotty Barnes is also somebody I'm getting a whole bunch of. He's somebody who I think that's going to remain the case. And then it is my most rostered pay up option. It did end up being Luka.
Okay, did end up being Luka. I'm with you. I think the positionality just helps out so much to get to him. I'm very surprised in our projections and in the ownership looking at it right now that we're getting to as much of him, we're getting to more Jokic than what we were of Luka Doncic. I love the Luka piece going up against Washington. Even if it weren't against Washington, I think Luka with the positionality against just X team would look great. But considering it is Washington, he should be able to slam. So I'm looking forward to it. We have one more super chat. I hadn't read it until just now. Alex Morris, $1.99. Who is the cuck play of the night? Thanks, guys. What the hell does that mean? So, Greg, I need you to tell me the player who is going to watch you do work, or what?
The player who's going to fuck our lineups.
But so the lineup is who I'm married to? I'm not married to my lineups. They're very, very fluid. They're more like multiple partners.
Yeah, well, they're gonna cheat on you tonight. Let's see. So who's gonna just ruin our lineups tonight? Who's just gonna absolutely leave them different than where they started?
Zach Collins could do the D'Angelo Russell plays, like a style of basketball where, like, if you told me a 3,500 Zach Collins starting and instead of Victor Wembanyama fails at 3,500, I'd be completely shocked by it. I'm not completely shocked at a 4,900 D-Lo against Miami, considering his extracurricular activities that he might partake in down in Miami. Like, that's not the most shocking thing that I've ever seen that he failed yesterday.
Let's see. Who is just going to potentially ruin my lineups? It would have to be a Spurs player, just looking at the amount of exposure I have to them. I'll say maybe. I mean, I love him as an option today, but the Spurs have been kind of hesitant to give Devin Vassell really big minutes this year at times. He's got a pretty significant injury history. So if this is one of these spots where, despite all of the guys being out for the Spurs, we just don't get the expected minutes out of Devin Vassell, in that scenario, it doesn't even matter how good of a points per minute fantasy producer he is in a great matchup against the Chicago Bulls. Because if you get one of these games where he plays sub 30 minutes and maybe just doesn't knock down his shots, then potentially the ceiling just won't be there for him. He did play 27 and a half minutes last game. It's the most he's played of the entire season. So I do expect that at a minimum we're getting that again, but you never know with Spurs rotations. It was the first time all year he'd played more than 25 minutes in a game. So I'd say the guy I have the most exposure to, and this is not going to change my opinion on this, I'm going to be playing a lot of him, but I'm a little nervous about the playing time of Devin Vassell.
I'm a little bit nervous about Stephon Castle. Pretty much everything you just said for Devin Vassell, like, Devin Vassell has been paid. He is, like, there's obviously incentive for them to develop Stephon Castle. I think he's a really good real-life basketball player. His defensive acumen coming from UConn over to the NBA, I think can't be understated. We've seen that with some other UConn players of late. Specifically, I can't remember the center for Portland off the top of my head. But Devin Vassell, there's no doubt, he is locked into more minutes as things go along. He's gone 24, 28. If he starts going into 32, 33, I mean, Justin Champagnie, like, they've seen that they want to make minutes for him. Keldon Johnson, he's kind of your usage guy off the bench along with Vassell. But, like, eventually Devin Vassell is going to be playing low 30s minutes, mid 30s minutes. And when that happens, what happens to Stephon Castle's minutes? I got to think they have to come down, even though he's played 30, 33, 34 in the last couple. He's looked good and they want him on the floor, but it's just not enough. And Devin Vassell, he's been there, done that. So for $100 more for him, I think Devin Vassell is just the way better play between the two. But I'm getting to quite a bit of Castle as well. What do you think about him on today's slate?
Yeah, so Stephon Castle, I have him in my player pool, but I'm underweight to the field to him. The biggest issue that I have with him is that I just don't want to be running out lineups that have like 5, 6 Spurs players. And there are other guys I'm prioritizing over him. Devin Vassell, Zach Collins, Chris Paul, Basti. So I think he is my 5th most rostered Spur. Yeah, if I filter by the Spurs here, yeah, he's the one I have the 5th most of, Stephon Castle. So with that being the case, unless I want to be playing lineups with 5 or 6 Spurs players, which I don't, I'm going to have a hard time getting him in 30% of my lineups or anything like that. So I'm a little bit underweight to the field to him, especially when I'm prioritizing those other guys that I had already mentioned. I guess the biggest talking point would be, would we rather roster Chris Paul or Castle? I prefer Chris Paul, but if you did prefer Castle, then I could see a scenario where my exposure leans more towards Chris Paul. Somebody else might have lineups that leans more towards Castle, but Paul's looked pretty good this year.
He's looked great. I mean, he's out there to be the floor general, to be the point god, and continue like developing some of these guys. It was kind of an interesting acquisition for San Antonio, but the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. They have so many young pieces. Keldon Johnson, Olympic gold medalist Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, who, walked himself into some money last year. There's a lot of young pieces there. And then Stephon Castle being another that I really do like. Obviously, Wemby, he goes without saying, but he's not playing today. I'm with you. Chris Paul sub 6K is still too low for his assist expectation. Lots of guys who are pretty decent shooters here. He should be out creating. Jeremy Sohan also having his minutes still depressed, despite the fact that we saw him absolutely smash. Holy shit. You ready for this, Greg?
I'm
Breaking
ready.
news alert. Washington Wizards starting today. Jordan Poole, Malcolm Brogdon, Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, and Marvin Bagley.
MB3. I didn't think at all about Marvin Bagley today. And Marvin Bagley is the flat min, so he is going to look like a pretty strong option now. But I mean, there's a lot of blowout risk in this game. What's the most he's played this entire season? This is insane. He hasn't played more than 10 minutes in a single game the entire year, and now he's starting.
What are we doing here? Okay, so Jonas Valanciunas, 5,700. You're just taking him out. You're not going to play him. I mean, he probably will now play 22 minutes off the bench and just completely smother in garbage time, so that's fun. But Marvin Bagley was not on my bingo card of a starter here. Greg, wouldn't you know it, he's center only at a flat 3K. Mm-hmm. Why does everybody hate us today?
This is another reason why, also back to what we talked about before, that it's going to be Luka over Jokic as a pay-up option from the first game, because even if Jokic goes out and scores, say, 65, 70 fantasy points, it's hard for me to imagine at this point that guys like Bassey, Zach Collins, whoever starts at center for Toronto, Bagley being flat min, there's so much good center value that I think it's going to just really be uphill sledding for Jokic to land in an optimal lineup tonight, unless he just completely destroys and has one of those, like 80, 90 fantasy point triple doubles, which is always possible. But I think it's way more likely that the cheap guys, at least a couple of these cheap centers, have big fantasy nights.
There's so many nights this year where if it's just like, if I got a regular game from Jokic or a regular game from Giannis or a regular game from Luka, I would have won a lot of tournaments, and it just hasn't happened. In fact, it's been like they go for a 20th percentile outcome. Of course, this will be the day he goes for like 98th percentile outcome, like 100 spot at like 4 or 5%. That would just be hilarious. That would be hilarious, Greg. Damian Delval.
I don't know if hilarious would be the right word. I would cry a little bit.
Yeah, we'll let the projections team update some stuff here on the back end. I want to bring this up too. Normally, we'll allude to some super chats we'll always break down the super chats, but we'll allude to comments in the chat from time to time. But Damian Delval, I live in Humboldt County in Northern California. They just had a 7.0 earthquake and tsunami evacuation. My day has been stressful, but watching you guys talk basketball makes me happy. First off, Damian, I'm glad you're safe and able to put that message in, because obviously that is very, very scary. I freaked out the first time. It was like a 3.0 earthquake in LA. And it was kind of a formative thing for me where I'm like, oh shit, the world moves out here. 7.0, I've never experienced anything like that. I hope you're doing well. We're all thinking about you. Keith Wilson, $1.99. Is GSA viable? Who the hell is GSA?
GSA. I feel like we're missing something simple here.
Is this going to be like a got him kind of thing? Please don't. We don't need that right now. SGA is who was asking. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Because you said GSA.
Honestly, we should have figured that out. We really should have figured out that it was just the G and the S mixed up there. So is SGA viable tonight? The answer is yes, viable. If I was playing one single lineup, though, he would not be in it. I currently have SGA in my first run here. I have him in 17% of lineups. They might go up a little bit just because we're getting a little bit more center value now in the form of Marvin Bagley. But SGA, yeah. So I have 17% of him. He's very clearly viable. With that said, I prefer finding the extra money to spend up for Luka. I have more exposure to Luka.
All right. We're going to try to let the projections sit here for a second, because then I have a question that I'm trying to figure out myself here. Rotating between all the cheap centers, we're going to talk through Bassi and Collins and Mogbo and now Marvin Bagley. But first, if you guys are looking to get the Sims tool right now, this second, while Greg and I are breaking it down, building in the Sims ourselves, you can do so for free. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but there are 11 ways that you can do it. There are 11 sites that Jordan Klein is putting up on your screen right now. And if you sign up at one of them, just one of them, you get yourself a month of the Sims in any sport that you want right now, completely free. There are a couple of steps. You simply have to have your first settled bet. So send your screenshot, hey, welcome email, followed by, hey, this was my first bet, and then having it settle there. And you'll have access to the Sims tool instantly in the NBA, the NFL. These are the great days to be having the Sims tool, especially. And hey, if you sign up at 2 spots, get a month of NBA and a month of NFL, which will run you all the way through the regular season. And trust me, with our projections team, the amount of time and effort they're putting into the data, the Sims tool, in conjunction with that, is going to help you be profitable, help you be in the best position you can to take down GPPs, which is kind of the name of the game, and why I think most of you are watching the show on a day in, day out basis. But there are pick'em sites, there are sports books, there's Rebet, which is a sweepstakes book available in 46 of the 50 United States. Tons of opportunities for you to sign up and get that month of the Sims in either one of the sports. Again, NBA, NFL. If you guys are looking at MMA, I know that there's a fun card coming up here as well. My guy Pantoja, is he fighting on Saturday, Greg? You would know.
Yep, it is Alessandro Pantoja against Kaya Sakura in the main event for UFC 310.
He fought one of the most insane fights ever. I went to UFC 290 in Vegas and got to watch him just absolutely go to war with Moreno. I love MMA DFS, and Greg is doing a breakdown video every Friday for the big UFC cards. Make sure you check that out. But it's a great sport to be getting the Sims tool for, too. So sign up at 3 sites. Get yourself a month of each single one, and then, hey, at the end of that, maybe you decide that this is worth the investment, which I think you'll find it will be. So check out everything we have here by signing up with one of our partners there on the screen, finding that first settled bet, having your welcome email, sending them both to support@stokastic.com. Would love to give you guys access for free for that. Alrighty, let's take a look here, Greg, because these centers, man, we have to start to prioritize them. We got Zach Collins. We have Bassi. We have potentially Mogbo, which is kind of a wild card sitting there, distant 4th probably, and then Marvin Bagley. How do you even start to figure out what you want to be playing at center today?
Yeah, so we don't quite have updates on, well, a couple of things we're waiting. Obviously, Toronto's starting lineup, which my gut feeling is still that Bruno Fernando starts. And then we've also got Bagley now starting, and I just have no clue what to make of his minutes. So here's the way that I want to prioritize them as of now. Collins 1, Bassi, Collins 1, Bassi 2. Those are the top 2 for me very clearly. 3 for me is going to be Bagley just because we know that he's starting right now. And then 4 is, I'll say Bruno Fernando, who I think starts at center for the Raptors, but very flimsy on that one, depending on who starts. If Mogba's the starter, I like him quite a bit as a DFS option. And Jason just messaged us to say the projections are updated. So I'm very curious to see if he put a big projection on Marvin Bagley. That is going to definitely change my opinion on how to approach him. And I mean, I think this is pretty reasonable. We've got Bagley in for 21 minutes and 20 fantasy points. So yeah, he's definitely an option now, but he's not somebody who I'm going to prioritize over Bassi or over Zach Collins. So same order.
Yeah, I'm really worried that this is one of those games where we start to see like Anthony Gill rotated in that we see. I mean, Justin Champagnie is active for today as well. Like there's a lot of weird guys for Washington that they've brought along that can kind of make this a headache. Now, we could also look back after the fact. I think this is probably true for most of the center plays outside of Zach Collins, who I think is pretty locked into the role of, a high 20s minutes. But we are very much looking at Jonas Valanciunas still coming in. I don't know why they paid him, but they did. You got Gill that's just kind of sitting there wasting away in Margaritaville, but he played 18 minutes there in that last game, which is a little bit random. But, obviously there's just so many ways that things are awkward for today. But yeah, Carrington, I think that you just sent that message here too. We've got Carrington who is out. Coach's decision. Is that correct, what I'm looking at?
That looks like it is the case. There's all kinds of weird things that are going on for the Mavericks. Other than the fact that they're starting Marvin Bagley, Carrington is currently listed inactive. I don't really know what to make of what the Washington Wizards are doing, but yeah, Carrington's listed as inactive right now, at least in the game notes at the stadium.
He was the guy that I had for the second most minutes on the entire team off the bench today. So why do they hate us? We have 20 minutes. And again, I'm just going to quit updating my stuff. I'm just going to simply, while hosting, hang out here and just kind of update and let our projections team do everything for me here, because Marvin Bagley, he's definitely somebody that's uncomfortable. He's going to be really popular considering that, that came out plenty of time ahead of time. And I'm looking at some places that have him projected much better than we do. And I'm on board with what we're looking at right now here at Stokastic, where there is a massive downside to using a center position on him. I would prefer Mogbo. Would you prefer Mogbo over Marvin Bagley at current ownership and presumed what we're looking at right now?
Well, there's so many different ways the Raptors could go, where if right now I had to roster one of them, just lock it in and just we couldn't make any changes, then I would say Bagley over Mogba, just because I don't know that Mogba is going to start. And I have some interest in him if he comes off the bench, but not that much compared to the other guys that we have here. So
I'm trying to find this Bub Carrington thing too, because I saw that come across, and I'm looking at Basketball Monster where they have a note saying coach's decision. Just a little bit awkward, a little bit strange to me. Let's find this if we can. That would be useful. All right. We're going to try to figure that one out here, but might as well throw this out here for the people because it's Nuke of the Night time. We had a super chat about it. I would very much like to give you guys the goods today, coming off of a better performance by me yesterday, although he ended up way more popular than projected everywhere. Peyton Pritchard, 50% of lineups, put up 33.5, was in most winning lineups, although you didn't need him by any means. There were a bunch of shooting guards that went nuts, but producer Jordan Klein hit the Nuke of the Night.
Yeah, and Jason also, because just going back and forth with Jason in Slack, because he's working on the projections, and yeah, we're trying to figure out whether to pull Carrington from the projections entirely or not, as the animation plays right there.
Yeah,
but
my cock is
dicey
gone.
Situation.
Yep, my balls are gone. Part of me wants to say like somebody extremely random for Washington, but I can't do it. I think that there's enough guys still active there where it's not going to change life dramatically for me. Like Johnny Davis probably plays a little bit more than what we have projected then. I'm kind of working through it. But Greg, you're the late ad here to the program. You're the all-star of the day, no matter what happens. But I want you to win money and help the other people win money as well. Who's your Nuke of the Night?
Yeah, so I think I feel like I just kind of have to go in this direction at this point. We are having all kinds of value that's opening up in the front court, and still more to come based on whether it's Mogba or whether it's Bruno Fernando, whoever ends up starting for the Toronto Raptors, or maybe they even go Chris Boucher as the starting center. That's also a possibility for tonight. So we're going to have all this front court value. We have to pay up somewhere. It makes a lot more sense to me, given the layout of the slate, to pay out in the backcourt than it does in the front court. So I think we just want to load up on Luka in the first locking game of the slate. He's not all that popular despite all this front court value that's opening up. So whatever value ends up opening up later, it's only going to make Luka look better throughout the night. And there's no way that we're going to be able to get to more of Luka as a spend up option, or really other spend up options for all that matters as the night goes on, because you've got here Luka and Jokic both lock in the first game of the night. Then you got in the second locking couple of games, there's SGA there. So we actually kind of do have to make our decision who we want to pay up for pretty early. And that is going to be Luka for me. So Luka, my most roster pay up option on the slate. And he just looks better and better as more and more value opens up.
Absolutely love him. I think that he makes all the sense in all the world. I'm going to go to probably the most uncomfortable nuke of the night that I've had in a long, long time, which is saying something when I locked a 6% Jalen Suggs. By the way, played 39 minutes is what it is. But Ayo Dosunmu is at 5,300, and he is currently projected for 13.5% ownership. There's a world where he has to play infinity minutes tonight. They're going up against the Spurs, 237 total. And you've got Josh Giddey, who is officially in here, but doesn't mean that he's just like perfectly healthy. And they've shown a lot of times where Josh Giddey just can't be on the floor defensively. Not that Talen Horton-Tucker really can, but they have Torrey Craig. They have Javon Carter if they want to go that direction, I suppose, as well. But there's a world where Ayo Dosunmu plays more point guard here tonight. Zach LaVine out there as well. Julian Phillips, whatever, if he's in that starting unit as well. Just kind of a dude out there. But with shooting guard eligibility, we are looking at this backcourt. I love the shout out of going to the expensive Luka. I love going up there as well. We got Ryan Dunn listed out here as well. So we'll address that here in a second. But my nuke of the night, because of the shooting guard eligibility and what that minutes upside could be in a great Spurs matchup, they don't want to dust off Talen Horton-Tucker. Give me Ayo Dosunmu, your nuke of the night. How do you feel about him for the Bulls tonight?
I would have felt much better about him if Josh Giddey was ruled out.
Same.
But now that Giddey is in, it makes him not quite as appealing to me at the $5,300 price tag. I'll have lineups with them because we got him projected around 30 fantasy points. But I'm not going to be able to prioritize him over some of the Spurs guys or Luka. So my last run, what did I have of him? I had him in, let's see. Yeah, 10% of Ayo. So I'll have some of them, but he's not going to be a priority for me.
Yeah, for me, I've got 28% of him at 13%. So he's the guy that I'm more than double the field on. Feel like whenever I'm more than double the field on somebody who's sub 20%, they end up being your nuke of the night. More of a tournament style play. But again, I'm not playing like 40, 50, 60% of him. I did play 67% of Jalen Suggs for what it's worth. So rip to me. Salah Abdallah, $4.99. Can you guys please do a FanDuel GPP, a quick FanDuel GPP by position and top 3 value plays as well? Greg, I know that we have tons to be updating. I know that you were a late ad here to the program, but FanDuel, do you have lineups built over there for tonight?
Sorry, could you kind of trailed off at the end. What was the question?
Do you have lineups built for FanDuel tonight?
I do not. I was only able to do lineups for the one site with the late notice fill-in.
You're just fine. I'm going to go through this one super, super quick, and hopefully we can have some updates, some other things. Looks like 1 minute ago here, but I have my FanDuel lineups. I did refresh them one time at the midway point of this show. That is not going to account. I need to see the positionality of Marvin Bagley. That is important. He is center only on FanDuel. That's not going to put him up into the stratosphere. But point guard, let's go by position. My top rostered Chris Paul is the highest owned that I have for FanDuel. The point guard position, shooting guard is Stephon Castle, more of a FanDuel priority, even at 5,300, even though he's 400 more. The way that the salary structures work and 9 guys in your lineup, I think he looks great. Amen Thompson in that late game. We'll talk a little bit about that late game as we get out of here towards the end of the FanDuel slate there. But Amen Thompson, 6,100. Lots of news that exists there for the Rockets, so we can touch on some of that. From the power forward position, Jonathan Kuminga on the opposite side of that one. Very, very popular. No Steph Curry, no Draymond Green. And at center, Alperen Şengün looks incredible. Although I had Trace Jackson Davis, who was showing up earlier. I don't think he ends up starting, though. So I'm probably going to end up switching that out if I were playing on FanDuel. I'll rerun one more time here. But Kevon Looney's been starting for them. I don't think I would want to have Trace Jackson Davis in that many lineups, but best of luck to you, Salah. Hopefully that helped you out for sure. Keith Wilson, $1.99. He's asking about Agbaji, not somebody that I've thought about a ton, but Greg, he's played 38 and 36 minutes the last 2. They've been on the rise, but I find usage really hard to come by with Grady Dick in, Scotty Barnes there, and of course, RJ Barrett, who likes to chuck. What do you think about Agbaji today?
He's not the best fantasy. I mean, we barely have him projected for over 20 fantasy points today. And with this being a slate that has a whole bunch of value, it's hard for me to see a reasonable scenario where Agbaji is going to outscore all of these other value options, a lot of them who are quite a bit less expensive than him. So Agbaji is not somebody who I want to be getting to.
Yeah, Grady Dick being back is a big one for me. He's basically an offensive piece for Toronto and nothing more. He's not getting anything done for you on the defensive end of the floor, so he's just going to absorb usage. And Agbaji, I think he's played decently at stretches this season, but he's still pretty scoring dependent, and that's going to be tough. I know the positionality, sub 5K looks all right, but with Grady Dick back, I don't see him stepping into like a ton of power forward minutes. That's where I'm hoping Chris Boucher is that dude. But best of luck to you. Maybe he does play a little bit more 4. I could maybe see a world where that gets extended, but still, projection not looking all that good for him. All right, let's take one more look here at the DraftKings board with some of the updates that came through here, Greg. We got Ryan Dunn out on the Phoenix Suns side of things. I don't know what that means, but like Royce O'Neal is probably live to step into a starting assignment. You have Plumlee where they could just go Iguodala at the 4 and Plumlee at the 5. Does Ryan Dunn's absence do anything for you?
It'll probably get me to a little bit more of the Royce O'Neal sort of guys like you had said before, but realistically, I think minutes are just going to be allocated around to players who are not the best fantasy producers from the Suns. We do have Kevin Durant, who's out for at least 2 weeks now or something like that. So there's certainly usage and playing time to go around there, but I'm not sure the absence of Ryan Dunn all of a sudden brings somebody into the fold who looks like a great option that we weren't really considering before. So if I go ahead and look at what our projections were, I mean, we only had Ryan Dunn before this projected for a few minutes. Maybe Iguodala, that means he has to play a little bit more, but we already have a lot of front court value as is. Royce O'Neal also is $4,900. So yeah, he looks a little bit better, but I'm not dying to play a ton of Royce O'Neal at $4,900. I'll have a couple of shares more of these guys, but it doesn't significantly alter the slate for me.
All right. Wanted to touch on that because that was something that came through there right before we broke down the FanDuel stuff. Let's get back to DraftKings here and cover some of our highest owned players that we have in lineups. I'm going to give the old spin of the Sims tool one more time with 9 minutes left before lock. See if there's anything that I give myself enough time to ROI boost in the case that Chris Boucher is a surprise starter there for Toronto or have some access to it. But currently looking at the Sims, who are you getting to the most in your lineups, Greg?
It's all Spurs guys now. So the top it is, which I mean, that's the way it was going to be before as well, but now especially so. My most rostered players, it's Zach Collins, it's Charles Bassey, who I don't mind playing together, even though there is negative correlation. They're both so cheap. It's not hard to envision a scenario where they each score 20 fantasy points. They're both pretty good fantasy producers. So Spurs guys, most notably Bassey, Zach Collins, Chris Paul, Devin Vassell. Not a real contrarian take there, but I think these are good pieces of chalk, all things considered.
All right. Yeah, I think they're great chalk pieces. And then if something happens with Toronto, we'll be able to swap onto it. There is no playback show after the show. We are live on playback. So hello to everybody hanging out there, watching Jordan Klein do amazing work with the Sims tool. But there's no question in my mind that this is going to be one that has some late swap incentives. I think I'll just hang out in the NBA DFS channel over at Stokastic. Make sure that if anything drops, I can kind of talk about my updated information. And yeah, then we're going to turn things over to NFL Live before lock there. It's going to be now we have that change. We got Lofty still hosting, but we got Ben Raza. We got the Sunday crew coming in for NFL Live before lock duty. And what a game it is. Lions, Packers, very excited for this one. So yeah, check that out immediately after our program. See if there's any other questions that we've got coming in. I think we got almost everything. We talked about Baji, of course.
I think there might be ones in Discord.
Okay, I'll pull that up here. I got it here.
So Discord. Yes. All right. So question.
What game or team to fade in single entry?
Larson wanted to know, is 60% of Chris Paul on FanDuel too much? No. I'm going to have more of that on Chris Paul. I'm doing one more run right now, but the last run I did, I had about 70% Chris Paul. That was for DraftKings, but still, Chris Paul, I think, a really strong option today. Do you have any issue with 60% of him, Eric?
No, none.
Yeah, neither do I. Next question here. I got JT Mac asking cash game locks on DK. Obviously, there's a lot of late news that could potentially be dropping. Is there anything that you're prioritizing from the first 2 games that you would want to play in cash? And then Luka, I think in cash is really, really viable. I don't think many people are going to have him, and yet I kind of don't care, Greg. No, I think Luka, really strong cash game option. He's it from the first 2 games, though. There's nobody else I'd play in cash.
Yeah, I don't want. I mean, Sar looks good from a tournament perspective. How much Sar are you getting to in the Sims? Because he seems to really, really pop on our side of things.
So it's funny because on the last run I did, remember I told you I was getting to a bunch of SAR? That was just kind of coincidental. I don't think Carrington ended up becoming, inactive shortly thereafter. But yeah, I do think that SAR now, who I was trying to lower my exposure to, now I'm just putting it back to make him look better again because I think there's extra opportunity, especially in garbage time. They've played him a little bit in garbage time lately. And if this game turns into a blowout, it might arguably even be a better thing for SAR's fantasy. I wouldn't play him in cash games, but yeah, for GPPs, I think he looks pretty good.
All right, we got Ethan 7 getting 70% Jared Butler on FanDuel. A lot of Butler questions, actually. So there's something happening over on FanDuel. He's 3,900 there. Got the shooting guard eligibility.
No,
that
Carrington.
seems a little bit much, but also I think he might be like the sneaky play of the entire day if Carrington is out here. 3K flat for Jared Butler. I'm going to be getting to him on DK now. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's that many people who are going to, because even here, you and I, we were just trying to confirm that Carrington is actually listed inactive. And I don't know how many people are going to realize 12 minutes before the slate started that Bub Carrington was an unexpected scratch from the lineup. So I think Jared Butler, really, really strong looking GPP option, and also another guy who could be playing in garbage time tonight.
There's one other guy near the min there at 3K. What do you feel about Talen Horton-Tucker? Because there's a lot of questions coming in about him as well.
Talen Horton-Tucker, I don't think I have. Do I have lineups?
I have 35% of him at the moment. So yeah, I think
I have some of him, but once again, keep in mind, Giddey's playing tonight. There's other better.
Yep.
I have more than 10% of him, but I prefer other cheap options.
I do too. That's a good way of putting it. But shout out Iowa State, because Talen Horton-Tucker, he was a real one for the hot cup of coffee that he had with us for sure. Let's go through anything else here from the premium Discord. Cash plays for FanDuel. Kind of covered a lot of those main ones. Greg's not playing over on FanDuel. I'm not playing on FanDuel, but Chris Paul definitely going to be a priority for cash over there. I think that made a lot of sense. Scotty Barnes, both sites, somebody that on DK we haven't talked about. Just assume that if you get Jakob Poeltl or anybody else out like that, Scotty Barnes, still too cheap at 9,100 on DK, 9,500 on FanDuel. We got SGA that, 10-8, not really going to be breaking into my lineups here, but if you need that $900 off of Luka, I don't think it's the apocalypse if you were to have to roll him out in cash instead. And then just a bunch of Spurs, kind of the same deal. You do have that Houston Rockets Golden State game, so Kuminga, and Thompson, those two are pretty viable as well. Don't think that there's a ton else to add over on FanDuel unless Greg had anything.
Nope, that is it for me. I'm just doing the final version of my lineups here, making sure nothing looks too out of place.
Oh,
what did I end
we
up
got
with?
CG DFS $5. Love the insight. Thanks for all the hard work, fellas. We appreciate you. And then Rob Strom $5. Is 12K for my entire front court too much on FanDuel tonight since everyone is ass and starting Iguodaro and Mogbo, Mbill, king of the single bullet in a hashtag. 12K for your entire front court. I got to say, with Zach Collins existing, with Chris Boucher, with Mogbo, with all these guys, there is no doubt that you could definitely see some grimy dudes at power forward center tonight, Greg, on FanDuel.
Yeah. And by the way, just wanted to, because I was really interested to see my final exposure to Bagley is 11%. I don't know what you ended up with, but 11%. I still ended up prioritizing other guys over him. And then, Jared Butler showed up in about half my lineups here on this final run, which also really changed the outlook of my lineups because while I still prefer Luka to Jokic, I ended up getting to a little bit more of Jokic than I thought I was going to just because of the Jared Butler value that opened up there.
Yeah, the Jared Butler value, I think it might be something where if people aren't paying attention, that did not come in on where, Greg. And if it doesn't come in there, we probably are sitting with like one of the best GPP plays in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's a spot here where I feel pretty good that Carrington is inactive based on what I've seen online.
Me too. And I trust Basketball Monster, your boy, Josh Lloyd. I think he's a really sharp follow. If you're not doing it for season-long NBA, which I use, I'm in a couple of leagues. I've been in a father-son league since 2004. So this is our 20th season rolling out actually 21st season of NBA of year-long NBA. So like I've been using Josh Lloyd for a while, and it's so wild because you used to work there once upon a time. Good people down there in Australia. I think we're just about to lock.
Nice accent.
Yeah, no, it fucking sucked. I have no Australian accent. 20 seconds before lock. Make sure you get your lineups in. Greg, who are you going to be cheering for here a lot tonight?
Let's see. So I'm definitely cheering for Bub Carrington to truly not end up playing today. That is something I'm going to be invested in.
Me too.
Spurs guys, that's going to be big for me. I am also going to be paying attention to that starting lineup for the Mavericks. Sar is somebody I'm cheering for now. He's in a third of my lineups. Yeah. And then also Scotty Barnes, who ended up in a good chunk of lineups as well.
Go Scotty Barnes. Go Luka Doncic. You didn't throw in our boy, Luka. And then I still like Zach LaVine tonight with no Kobe White. Somebody that I think from a tournament perspective, I've made some room for. But guys, we're officially at lock here. We're going to get the heck up out of here. Greg Ehrenberg, amazing stuff in relief duty. Make sure you follow him at G Ehrenberg DFS over on X. He is doing the unbelievable, the amazing portfolio EV challenge. It's not even a challenge. It's just a bankroll accumulator at this point in time. He's up almost $400 now off of an original $100 bankroll. It's gone redonkulous. It's gone nuclear, as it should. Greg, any final words for the people?
No, just people still asking about Bub Carrington. No official confirmation whether he's in or out, but we are assuming that he is not playing tonight.
We are assuming that. And we are going to be crossing our fingers. I'm going to go and play back and watch some of that. But make sure that in 29 minutes, you guys are tuning in to NFL Live Before Lock with Lofty and Ben Raza, Jazz Raz DFS. Thank you, Jordan Klein. I'm Eric Lindquist. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist if you're so obliged. We'll see you guys tomorrow.